as I record this video today. Truly horrible news is coming out of Israel about a horrific tragedy. Mira Sharf, a 25-year-old wife and mother who, with her husband Shmuel, are the Chabad emissaries to New Delhi, India, was killed, along with two other Israeli citizens, when a rocket from Gaza hit their Kiryat Malachi apartment. Mira and her husband were in Israel to commemorate the anniversary of the murders of their colleagues and fellow Chabad emissaries to Mumbai, India. Her husband and 3 children are in critical condition. Mira was 7 months pregnant. Today is the 15th of November, the 1st of Kislev. My name is Sandra Gaisinski, and this week's TorahByte is dedicated in their memory. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Toldot. In it, we are introduced to the 2 sons of Yitzchak and Rivka, the famous twins Yaakov and Esav. Now, while they were twins, they could not have been more different one from the other. The verse tells us Esav was a Yodea Tzayid Isadeh. He was an expert hunter and trapper, a man of the field, a wild man. And Yaakov was an Ish Tam Yoshev Ohali. He was a quiet man who preferred to spend his days in the tent studying Torah. Yitzchak loved Esav, and Rivka loved Yaakov. As to why Yitzchak loved Esav in particular, the verse tells us, "Vayehav Yitzchak et Esav ki tzayid befiv." That Yitzchak loved Esav because the trapping was in his mouth. Simply translated, Esav's trappings were in the mouth of Yitzchak. Esav kept, Yitzchak fed, and therefore Yitzchak preferred Esav. Now, if you're bothered by this relatively shallow depiction of the great person that Yitzchak was, then Rashi agrees with you. And therefore Rashi says we have to turn to the explanation of the Medrash Tanchuma, which says as follows, that the trappings were in his mouth is a reference to Esav's mouth. That Esav trapped Yitzchak with the words of his mouth. He would trick his father Yitzchak by asking him such questions as, "Father, He'ach ma'asrin et hamelach, how does one tithe salt? Kasavar aviv shemedaktek b'mitzvot." And his father then believed that he was a particular adherent of the mitzvot. Now this warrants further explanation, because clearly Yitzchak knew the nature of his son Esav and wasn't fooled by this relatively ludicrous question, especially because salt is not meant to be tithed according to Jewish law. So if anything, this question shows on Esav's ignorance rather than his great adherence to the mitzvot. To understand this, we need to turn to a relatively similar disagreement between spouses in regards to their children that actually happened 1 generation earlier, between Avraham and Sarah. Avraham and Sarah noticed that their son Yishmael is not being a great influence on Yitzchak. And so Sarah says, "Send him away." Avraham is reluctant to do so. He says, "There's a chance that we can rehabilitate Yishmael, that we can turn him around." God tells Abraham, "Listen to Sarah and send him away." Now, the Kabbalah tells us that the source of the souls of our patriarchs, Abraham and Yitzchak, is from the level known as Chachma, wisdom. And the sources of our matriarchs, Sarah and Rivka, comes from the level known as Binah, understanding, comprehension. The difference between these two levels is that Chokhmah is the vision, the big idea, the birth of a spark, a concept. Bina is drawing that idea down and having it rest in details and explanation, comprehension. Avraham and Yitzchak both were excited with the potential in things. And Sarah and Rivka understood that whatever potential an idea has, it needs to be brought down into reality. It needs to be fleshed out in the details. So when Avraham looked at Ishmael and saw the potential to turn him around, Sarah looked at the reality and said, yes, but in the meantime he is corrupting our son Yitzchak, and that is no good. Esav understood his father's nature, and he trapped him by playing the potential card. Esav came and asked, Heyach masrin et hamelach. How does one tithe salt? How does one evaluate the worth of salt in order to bring 1/10 of that to charity? Do you gauge salt at its face value, $2 or $3 for an entire box? Or do you gauge salt at its potential value? You see, one little pinch of salt, just so, can take a very bland dish and turn it into quite a delicacy, which then makes it worth far more. So the potential value of salt is far greater than it is at face value. And Esav is turning to his father and saying, yes, you know who I am, but I have the potential of being far greater. And he excited Yitzchak with that prospect. Rivka, on the other hand, knew that while Esav recognized his potential, he had no intention of living it out. This is borne out by the fact that Esav took his birthright and squandered it, had no interest in pursuing it. The lesson to us, besides for the lesson to all men to listen to their wives, is that it's not good enough to know your potential. You have to make an effort to see it through. We each are the beneficiary of great gifts from God. We are not worth our talents and our gifts. We are worth what we choose to do with them. Wishing everybody a week of success in achieving our potential, and looking forward to seeing you next week for the next installment of the weekly TorahByte. Shabbat Shalom.